Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about building a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. I'm your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify. Every week, we have the opportunity to bring on authors, speakers, coaches, leaders of nonprofits who are also passionate about putting God back in business, and it is no different this week. Very excited for our guest today. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. Ryan Englin is passionate about supporting growing businesses, particularly in blue collar industries, to build amazingly productive companies by hiring the right people. Growing up, he saw his own father working 12-hour shifts and weekends as an owner operator, witnessing firsthand the struggles that these companies have in hiring quality frontline employees. Ryan was determined to help them find a better way. His company, Core Matters, provides coaching and training on attracting, hiring, and retaining rock star employees. Using his proven process, the Core Fit hiring system, small and mid-sized businesses learn how to start hiring better people faster. With almost a decade in the business, Ryan has worked with over 100 clients, helping business owners achieve their goals by hiring the right people. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fortified Life, Ryan Englin. Ryan, what's going on, sir?
Oh, thank you for the intro, Jason. That was awesome. I am looking forward to this. It's an amazing day. So let's jump in.
Yes, Ryan, it's funny because we were talking about this offline, but other than the occasional overnight success, most people don't find themselves in the current position they're in without going through a thing. It makes me think about the farmers insurance commercials. We know a thing or two because we've learned a thing or two. So Ryan, give us a little background of there's what's in the bio, but then there's the actual journey.
Yep.
Go back a little bit and tell us what brought us to where you're at in 2026.
You mentioned it already. I grew up in a blue collar family. My dad was an owner operator, and anybody that knows an owner operator or entrepreneur for that matter has known someone who said, "Hey, I can make more money. I can have more time. I can have more freedom. I'm going to go start my own business." And then reality kicks in, and we wake up 10 years later and we've got employees and we've got a business, and it's sucking the life out of us because we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the freedom we thought we'd have. And I watched that happen to my dad. And
Mm.
I remember I spent a lot of time with my dad when I was a kid, but it was always at the shop. It was always down at the shop. He was always working. And so I thought, I don't want this for my life. I'm not going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to jump into the corporate world. I'm going to do that. And I learned a lot about what makes organizations really large and how corporations work and how to build successful teams. And I enjoyed it. But then there's something about entrepreneurship I'm like, I got to get into. I always thought my dad struggled a lot. And I always thought it was because he didn't have enough customers. I always thought it was a revenue problem. Like if he just had more customers. So I got into marketing and then quickly realized that wasn't the issue for most business owners. The issue is we don't know how to build a successful team that we trust. That was my dad's problem. So when I started Core Matters, actually it's been 15 years I've been in business now. When I started this, I quickly realized that it wasn't my dad's fault. It's that no one ever taught him how to implement these processes and these tools. So I started doing that with companies, and we saw amazing transformative success in their ability to build teams of people they could trust. And I put that into a system. We call it the Core Fit Blueprint. We talk about the hiring component inside of the book, Hire Better People Faster. But then there's an onboarding component and there's a retention component. There's so many other things that go into it. So that's what we do. We work with companies to build these processes, implement them for them, and then teach their team how to use them so that they can use them over and over again. I subscribe to the philosophy. We got to teach them to fish.
I love that, Ryan. You mentioned something. I don't want the listeners to skip over this, as I almost think it's a forgotten about path, especially the popularity, as we call it, of entrepreneurship. And that was you went out, granted, albeit a different motivation maybe at the time, but you went out in corporate and you learned. Can you talk about maybe when you go that right, Ryan, what that allowed you to learn that prepared you to kind of launch out and do your own thing? Because when you work in corporate, you realize things are done a certain way. there's things are being provided for you. And so, what would you say is different about somebody that strikes out after learning someone else's way or learning maybe how to just be a good
Yeah.
employee or be a good leader? What would you say about that path?
I think the big thing that I learned in my time in corporate was that what it really did was it just fueled a passion for process in my
Okay.
mind. That's what it was. If I want somebody to do something a certain way, I have to be able to show them and teach them and guide them on how to do it a certain way. And so many entrepreneurs go do that. People look around, I don't even know what that is, but I'll go do that. And that's what corporate did is corporate said, hey, we have the books, the training, the processes. It was insane. To me, it was way too much. But what it did was it allowed them to scale because everybody was doing things the same way. And that was what it really taught me. You've probably heard this before, especially I've heard this a lot in sales from my coach. He's like, you just got to put in the reps. You just got to put in the reps. Go make a bunch of sales calls, go fail on a bunch of them, figure it out. You got to put in the reps. And when it comes to hiring, a lot of entrepreneurs don't get the reps. They hire maybe 4 or 5 people and then they kind of simmer for a bit. And then they got to go hire a couple more people and then they simmer for a bit. When I was in corporate, I was making offers to over 100 people a month.
Wow.
That's a lot of reps.
Yeah.
So for the 10 years I was in corporate, I was growing teams. I was in banking for a lot of that. And I was growing these processing teams and I was hiring people and I was bringing them on board and I was supporting the process. But when you interview that much, you learn a lot about interviewing, a lot about interviewing. So couple that with my leadership training and my desire to just always be learning. And that's really what I think fueled this whole thing for me and helped me figure it out. Because when I started the business, it had nothing to do with what we do today. We were a marketing company, websites, emails, exciting stuff, because that's what I thought so many of these entrepreneurs needed. But what they really needed was the people processes. And so that's what we pivoted to. And it just so happened that God put me in a place where I got to learn those things. And then now I'm applying it in the business.
Oh, Ryan, I think that's a perfect segue because you said God put you in this place. And we know the steps of a righteous man are ordered. When you came to that realization of, you know what, there are moves that I can make as an individual. And then there are times where we know, oh, I see, this is a God thing. So what role did faith play in the process? Positioning being one of them, as you
Yeah.
just stated.
Yeah. I grew up in the church. And so the faith was something that I had around me. I got to the point where my college years took for granted. And I was like, God will be there when I'm ready. Right? We'll do that. And when I look back, for me, I can't think of a time in my life where I was going through something and I was like, played God. Usually that happens afterwards. It was brutal. And the things that you have to deal with and an accusation can get made about you. And all of a sudden you got HR breathing down your neck and they're talking about stuff. And I'm like, this didn't even happen. This is crazy. The attacks that were coming were just nonstop. And it was I was almost done. I was about 2 years left before I started my entrepreneurial journey. So 2 years left in corporate. And we joined a new church. My wife and I got baptized. And it was a big thing for us. And the attacks just came crazy. And I remember I left one of my jobs and I was talking to my wife about the experience I had gone through and why I was forced to leave. And I just left. It felt like God said, hey, now's the time to walk away, move on to other things. And he just lined things up after that. But
Wow.
he had to make it so incredibly uncomfortable for me in order for me to be obedient and leave. That is something I have learned in my faith journey is that I don't have to get smacked upset ahead by the 2x4 by God in order to be obedient. Maybe I can do a little, I still struggle, but that was one of the things that came out of that was it just strengthened my faith because afterwards I was like played. And then another thing happened. I'm like played. And it was just in the moment it sucked. In the
Right.
moment it was awful. But I was going through that learning process and that sanctification process that we all have to go through. And that was the big thing for me. And I'm so grateful for it now, but in the time it sucked. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It was awful.
Yeah.
But it's just part of the journey and part of the relationship that the Lord and I have is that I tend to require a little bit of the awful before it gets better.
I see. Ryan, to that point, little play on words, how could you know what a core fit was unless you were a fit to begin with? And
There you
so
go.
we all know we all go through our own journey, and then here we come. So, Ryan, we have your company, you've got your blueprint, and we'll get to the book in a second. You already teased this a little bit, but the core fit blueprint, talk to us about it. And you had a ton of reps in corporate hiring people. When did you get this idea of, you know what, I've seen some things and I think there should be a way, like you said, process of bringing people on. How did you arrive at
Yeah.
making this blueprint and saying, you know, this is the direction that I'm going to go because people need this kind of help and support?
So I had my marketing company, and we were doing a lot of work for home service contractors, HVAC, plumbing, that kind of stuff. And we had a bunch of companies. It was the middle of the summer. It was hot. Bunch of HVAC contractors that were like, we don't need marketing services anymore. The phone won't stop ringing. We can't get to them fast enough. And I don't know if this was insanity or brilliance, but I was like, I can help you with getting more techs. I had no idea if I could at the time. But I always believed that recruiting was a marketing issue. If we
Mm.
struggled to recruit, it's because we have a marketing problem. And I was a marketer. So I went to some clients and I said, hey, how about I help you get some techs? And we were good at it and it worked really well. But then they didn't know how to interview the techs. If they interviewed them,
Ah,
they didn't know how to make the offer. If they offered them the job, they didn't know how to onboard them. If they onboard them, they didn't know how to keep them. And so what I found out was probably over, let's see, I wrote the book, finished the book in 21. So probably about 6 years of me identifying, hey, there's a problem that's downstream from the problem I'm fixing now that we're going to have to deal with eventually. And that's what originally led me to the Core Fit hiring system, which focused on the hiring part, but there's so much more. And that's where we came up with the blueprint. So the blueprint took about 6 years to come up with these ideas and these processes and these tools, and taking a lot of what I learned in corporate and simplifying it, removing the costs associated with some of those processes, and making it easy for the entrepreneur to put in place. And that's what we did. So now the blueprint is a 7-phase program that we go through, everything from stopping the bleeding all the way to helping them scale with confidence.
man, that's powerful right there, Ryan. And we mentioned, or you mentioned a second ago, the book as well. And talk to us about the book, Ryan. And folks, make sure we'll have this in the show notes because you're gonna want to pay attention to this and get your own copy. It's called Hire Better People Faster, a proven system for attracting the employees you want. So you have the system. What made you want to codify things in a book, Ryan?
If you remember my story back to my dad never grew his company more than 10 or 12 people. And that was kind of where he settled down and things worked. I knew that there were a lot of entrepreneurs like my dad or smaller than my dad that were
Mhm.
never going to be able to hire me. Whether it was because they couldn't afford it, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the time. And so I thought, if I could put this in a book, I can help so many more people. I believe that when you hire the right people that you can trust, not only do you help your business, but you help a family somewhere. And to me, this was really about making impact. In fact, one of our vision at Core Matters is to have 500,000 families impacted by their existing employer because their employer is running on our system.
Wow.
That's really my focus. Everything we do is employee first, thinking about that frontline employee. Yes, we help employers, but we do it by serving the employee.
Mhm.
And I just knew that there were so many businesses out there that had a lot of employees that would never be impacted by this. So I wrote the book to help them. And yeah, that's really the reason I did it.
Wow, Ryan, that's powerful because I can hear just in your conviction. This is how we make, through the context of business, this is how we make society flourish. When you've got a company that cares about employees, which means by extension their families, that's huge. I just commend you on that because when you take care of people, it reflects the heart of God and it makes society flourish. And I think sometimes we forget about that aspect of what we get to do in business. So I thank you for highlighting that piece of what you do for sure.
Thank you.
Ryan, so we've got the book, we have the company, and you mentioned something earlier, this pattern. They hire a few folks and then they stop. And then they hire a couple more. Where does that come from? Because I feel like I hear stories about that all the time. They got three or four and then they kind of hung out. And then they got another two or three. Why as humans or as entrepreneurs, what makes us gravitate toward that way of bringing people on?
I think there's been books written about this. I call it the revenue roller coaster. Right.
Okay.
So, as small business owners, we go get all this business and then we go deliver all this business and we go get all this business and we deliver all this business and does this. And so we hire when we're at the bottom and we go, whoa, look at all this business I got to get to, or this business I'm turning away. Let's start hiring. And then we get to the top and we're like, okay, we got too many people now on the way down. We'll just hang out. And I think it's because the owners are too involved in the day to day. That's where it comes from. I don't think it's a choice. I guess they choose to be in the day to day, but it's not so much a choice of, oh, I just want to hire in these little spurts. It's the idea that they're out there delivering the work. They're on the shop floor. They're on the phones. They're in the back rooms developing, producing, whatever it is. And that's the struggle for so many entrepreneurs. And the reason I believe that happens more than anything is because deep down, they don't trust the people they have. That's why we get stuck in that.
Reminds me of another book, Speed of Trust. Everything happens at the speed of trust. So I love how you said when you kind of peel everything away, it boils down to, do I trust the people or not? And what a hurdle for many entrepreneurs and business owners to have to overcome, but everybody has to overcome that at some point. So you're shining a light on something huge for a lot of people. Wow. Ryan, we talked about this a little bit before too. So while you deal with hiring, this book is not exclusively about HR. So can you highlight for the reader what other takeaways you want for them when they pick up this book? Their takeaway shouldn't just be, oh, this is an HR book. You as the author, what else would you like for them to see?
I am not an HR guy. I play in the gray area. And so HR people are like, you can't do that. I'm like, show me where I can't do that, because I'm pretty sure we can. So I like to think of that. So when you think of HR, and this is where most people think HR and they just think they're people.
Yeah.
Well, if you really look at what HR generalists and the HR industry is, it's about managing human resources. It's about protecting your people and protecting the company. That's what HR is about. It's a compliance role. It's following the rules and the regulations. It's making sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed and that all of your reports are done. That's what HR is about. It's making sure you got good benefit plans and your payroll's working. That's HR. There's a whole element to your people processes that HR, I don't want to say they dismiss, but it's almost like they're oblivious to it, or maybe they're just too busy in compliance. And that's what we call the employee experience. There's an experience that your employees have when they come to work. There's a feeling that they have when they get off of work and they go home. And that is the piece that I think so many businesses miss, big and small, it doesn't matter. But when they are not intentional about their employee experience, if they're not thinking, do my employees feel like they belong here? Do they get up on a Monday morning and they're excited to come see their friends? Or do they get up on Monday, or do they go to bed Sunday night with a upset stomach like, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow, right? What are they feeling? When they get off at the end of the day, do they go home and they are in a good mood and they share it with their family? Or do they get off at the end of the day and they yell at the kids and their spouse because they had a rough day at work today?
Yeah.
That's the experience that we help them deliver and be intentional about. HR doesn't do that stuff. HR will do an engagement survey, or HR will do a feedback survey. But then HR says, okay, here's the problem. And that's it. They don't know how to fix it because HR is not so involved in that. Now, there are some people in HR that are starting to think this way, but that's really the problem. We have to make it so that people feel like they belong. We have to make it so that people feel like they're a part of something. We have to make it so that people are excited about where we're going and where their career's going. And that's what we dig into in the book, is how do we make sure that we're intentional about who we are as an organization? We're intentional about why we do what we do, how we behave, what's required to really feel like you belong on the team? And then how do you qualify the people that you want to bring in to be a part of that? Most entrepreneurs don't know how to interview. Most
Mm.
have no clue. They think they ask them a couple of questions about what's on the job description, maybe ask a couple of questions on their resume, like, why'd you leave this job? And why didn't you stay at this job too long? But that has nothing to do with aligning people who are bought into your vision and to your value system and your belief system. And that's what's going to allow people to be excited on Monday morning and go home excited at the end of the day.
Folks, you heard it directly from the author himself. Ryan, you've dropped nuggets of wisdom. You've gotten us fired up. Where can people go get a copy of the book now?
I actually have an offer for the listeners. You go to corematters.com/free book. I'll sign a copy and mail it to you. All you got to do is help me out with some shipping and handling. But if you aren't a reader, the audiobook is available as well. You can go get that wherever you get your audiobooks. But if you want a signed copy, you can go to corematters.com/free book and I'll send you a copy. And when you go through that route as well, I've got 12 tools that we've developed that we're giving away to you guys as free as well. 12 downloads. We got a little bit of training on each one of the tools. You can download it. You can implement it in your business. We talk about all the tools in the book. So this is my gift to you as well.
Wow. Ryan, can't thank you enough for that, man. Love your generosity.
Thank you.
Ryan, we've talked about your background. We've talked about the company. We've talked about the book, but you also are a fellow podcaster. You've got your show. So tell us more about, I believe it's called Tricks of the Trade.
Titans of the Trades.
Titans of the Trades. Tell
Yeah.
us more about that show, the meaning of it, and just the type of guests and conversations that you have.
So yeah, we've had the show for a couple of years, and my vision for the show originally was to bring entrepreneurs on that had been in the trenches, that have pushed through, that have figured it out, and have great stories to share about how they overcame the challenges in business. And the idea here was to bring hope and inspiration to so many of the entrepreneurs that are in the trades right now struggling. There's a belief that we have a labor shortage in the trades. And I say it's a belief because I don't believe it's reality. I think that we have a marketing problem in the trades, and I think that we have a reputation problem in the trades, both marketing. And that's why we struggle so much. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in construction, that have solved the hiring problem, that have solved most of their people problems. So those are the types of guests that we bring on, is to talk through that. What did they learn along the way? What are the things that they did that really helped them stand out? What changes did they have to make in themselves to become the leader that so many other people wanted to follow? And so that's the kind of stories that we tell on Titans of the Trades. We just wrapped up a season, and so we've got a few more Titans that we're going to be speaking to, and then we're going to be going to more solo episodes where I talk about the things that I've seen and the things that I've learned over the last 180 episodes or so, as well as the work that we're doing. Because there's so many other stories, great, amazing stories that I'm just going to have to tell because they're too shy to tell them themselves. And then we'll bring on the occasional guest for a deep dive into whatever it is that we're working on. But most of them, it's going to be mostly educational stories, things that I've seen happen over the last 15 years.
Love it. I think the best is yet to come, Ryan. So, folks, Titans of the Trades, make sure you go out and support the show. Where can people listen, Ryan?
Anywhere you get your podcast. Got a lot of people on Apple Podcasts. Spotify's a big one for us. We also take a lot of clips and put the full episodes on YouTube as well. So YouTube's actually our fastest growing distribution channel for the podcast right now.
Love it. Love it. And folks, we'll have all of this information in the show notes, the podcast, the book. Trust me, you will know how to get all of the resources that Ryan.
I do my best to make it easy to find this stuff.
Yeah. Ryan, before we get ready to go, when you look at the back half of 2026, what are you excited about?
You told me that you heard about me and you learned about me from my guest appearance on the FCCI podcast. And on that show, I shared a challenge that I had last year with my health and how the Lord led me through it. He gave me clarity on what he wanted to do with the business. And I've just stayed on that path for the last 7 months now. I've stayed on that path. And I believe that the Lord has a lot of great things planned for the business. And it's not about me. It's his business, not mine. And so I am doing my best to be obedient and prepare this business to grow and scale without me. because I think that's what he wants, is for others to take the charge and run with it. So over the next 6 months, we're launching our first software platform. Very excited about that. And it's specifically designed to help hiring managers with their performance evaluations. In a small business, no one ever wants to do a performance review.
Yeah.
They tie it to, oh, it's raise time. I guess I better tell this employee if they're doing a good job or not. And they dread it and they hate it, and it almost always falls up to the owner. And so we've developed software that'll actually guide owners and their hiring managers on how to have these conversations. And they're so much easier than they think they are. So I'm very excited about that. And then we're automating a lot of the business. I'm getting all of the business out of my head so that I can teach other coaches, advisors, even people that might want to implement this system for their clients, other coaches. We're looking at licensing this so that people can have it as another way to grow their businesses. And I think that's a lot of what the Lord wants, is just to expand the reach beyond what I would be able to do on my own. And over the last 7 months, the business has changed. You wouldn't even recognize it. 7 months ago, you looked at it now, it wouldn't even look the same. And I'm just planning to do that again over the rest of this year.
I love it. Expansion and scale. I love it. Ryan, that's all we have time for here on the Fortified Life. I cannot thank you enough. We've mentioned the book and the podcast. Is there anywhere else, website, social media, that people can go to keep up with all the cool work that you're doing?
Yeah. So corematters.com is the main website, and lots of training material, lots of free downloads there. And then LinkedIn, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, feel free to connect. DM me if you got a question. I love answering questions. In fact, every couple months or so, we do an Ask Me Anything, and we just collect all the questions we've received over through our time on LinkedIn, and then anybody that wants to show up and ask other questions. I love answering questions live. It's a lot of fun.
I love it, Ryan. Just like you love answering the questions, I'm sure after listening to this, they'll love you. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
for sure. Folks, yeah, we'll have all of Ryan's information in the show notes, fortifiedlifepodcast.com. You know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith and the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Make sure to subscribe to The Fortified Life on YouTube at The Fortified Life, and then on your podcast platform of choice, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Just search The Fortified Life and you will find us. But we'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.